Ever find yourself just staring at your screen waiting for a website to load?
Yeah,
It's like the worst part of being online.
absolutely.
Today, we are diving deep into website speed. What can cause a slow website? And more importantly, how to fix those issues and speed things up.
That's right.
We'll also look at just how much seemingly tiny issues can impact your website's performance.
Yeah.
So why should we even care about website speed? I mean, obviously, waiting for a page to load is frustrating, but is there any other reason to really care about this?
Well, there are actually quite a few.
Okay.
The first is probably the most obvious.
Okay.
A slow website annoys your visitors.
Yeah, true.
You know, they click on your site and then they just sit there waiting and waiting for it to load.
Yeah.
It's a bad first impression.
Yeah, nobody likes that.
And that can lead to higher bounce rates.
Bounce rates.
Yeah, a bounce rate just means people are leaving your site without really doing anything.
Okay, I see.
They came, they saw Herm, and they left. Maybe they didn't even see anything because the website took too long to load.
It's true.
So they just clicked the back button.
Yeah.
And you know those high bounce rates?
Yeah.
They're bad news for pretty much anyone with an online presence.
Makes sense.
But it's not just about keeping your visitors happy.
Okay.
Search engines like Google are also paying attention to how fast your website is.
Really?
Yeah, they actually can penalize slow websites.
Wow.
Yeah, meaning even fewer people are going to find your site in the first place.
Okay.
So it's not just people being impatient, it can really hurt your site overall.
That makes sense.
And then finally, the real bottom line, slow websites mean lost revenue.
Oh, yeah, true.
If people can't even get your website to load, they can't buy anything from you.
Nobody is adding things to their cart if they can't see the page.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into some of the culprits.
Okay.
What causes a website to be slow?
Sure.
What are some of the things that people are doing wrong?
Well, one of the biggest offenders is probably images.
Images.
Yeah, you know those large, high-resolution photos.
Right, yeah, you want to have a really nice-looking website.
Right, of course, but they can also really slow things down. It's all about finding that balance between visuals and speed.
Yeah, I guess you need to find a sweet spot there.
Right, you don't want to sacrifice the looks of your site, but you also don't want it to be so slow that nobody sticks around long enough to see it.
So what can people do?
Well, the good news is there's an easy fix for this one.
Okay, good.
Image compression.
Image compression.
Yeah.
Is that zipping a file?
Sort of.
Mhm.
You know, there are tools like TinyPNG,
Okay.
and they can help you shrink those big image files without sacrificing too much in the way of quality.
Okay, cool. So it's not noticeable.
It shouldn't be.
Okay, awesome.
And if you want to get even more technical, there's a format called WebP.
WebP.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
It uses both lossy and lossless compression.
Okay. I'm not really sure what that means, but
It means it can create smaller file sizes without really compromising the look of the image.
oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's pretty great technology.
Okay.
Another thing that can really slow down a site is plugins.
Elegance.
Yeah, you know those little extras that you add to your website
Okay, yeah.
to give it more features?
Yeah, I love plugins.
They can be great, but too many of them can weigh your site down.
Okay.
You know, like too many passengers on a bus,
I see.
too many plugins, and everything slows to a crawl.
So you're saying I should uninstall some plugins?
Well, you need to be selective.
Okay.
Make sure that you're only using plugins that you really need.
Okay.
And every once in a while, you should take a look at the plugins you have installed.
Yeah?
And uninstall any that you're not actually using.
Like spring cleaning for your website.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then what about those big popular plugins?
Yeah, you need to be careful with those two,
Okay.
especially things like caching plugins. You know, those can be really helpful, but some of them can add a lot of code to your site,
Okay.
and sometimes that can actually slow things down.
So it's like a trade-off.
Yeah, you need to find a balance between the features that a plugin offers and the impact it has on your site's performance.
Okay.
Now, another thing that's really important is your hosting.
Hosting.
Yeah, your hosting plan.
Like where my website lives.
Exactly. It's like the foundation of your website.
Okay.
And if that foundation is weak, everything suffers.
I see.
You know, it can be tempting to choose a really cheap hosting plan.
Yes, especially when you're first starting out.
Right. But a lot of times you get what you pay for.
Okay, so it's worth it to spend a little bit more.
Yeah, sometimes spending a little more on a faster server can make a huge difference in how fast your website loads.
Okay, good to know.
And then there's the code of your website.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about code.
Well, you don't really need to, but it's good to know that if the code is messy or bloated, that can also slow your site down. Oh, okay.
It's kind of like having a really messy closet.
Right.
Everything takes longer to find when it's not organized.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And luckily, there are tools that can help clean up the code on your website and make it more efficient.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Um, Auto-Optimize
Okay.
and WP Rocket.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, those are popular options.
Okay, cool. So those can help.
They can, yeah.
Awesome.
And then there are redirects.
Redirects. I
Yeah.
think I know what those are, but
They're like detours on a road trip.
okay.
Sometimes they're necessary,
Right.
but too many redirects can really create a chain reaction that just delays everything.
Okay.
So try to minimize redirects whenever possible.
Okay.
And make sure to fix any broken links on your site.
Gotcha.
That can also help speed things up.
Okay, so now I want to talk about caching.
Oh yeah, caching is a big one.
Can you explain caching like I'm 5 years old?
Sure. Caching is basically like having a cheat sheet for your website. Okay, I like cheat sheets.
Yeah, it stores frequently accessed data in a temporary location so it can be retrieved quickly.
Oh, okay.
So your server doesn't have to regenerate that same data every single time someone visits your website.
So it's like a shortcut.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And caching plugins can really improve your load times by creating these ready-to-go copies of your website.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to get a caching plugin.
Yeah, they can be super helpful.
Okay, so we've talked about the size of files, but what about the order that things load in?
Oh, yeah, that can make a big difference, too.
Go ahead.
Sometimes certain types of code can block other things from loading.
Like what?
Well, you've heard of JavaScript, right?
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes JavaScript can actually block the main content of your page from loading quickly.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine your website is like a house under construction.
Okay.
And render blocking JavaScript is like having to wait for the plumber to finish before you can even start building the walls.
Oh, wow. So everything is held up. Okay, so how do you fix that?
Well, you can defer JavaScript loading.
Defer.
Yeah, it basically means that the page can appear faster, and then those JavaScript files can load in the background.
Oh, so it's like they're less important.
Well, they are important, but they don't need to load first.
Okay, I see. That makes sense.
And then there's something called HTTP requests.
Oh my gosh, what are those?
So every time your browser needs to fetch something from the server, it sends an HTTP request.
Okay.
You can think of it like making a separate trip to the store for each item on your shopping list.
Okay.
So the more requests that your website makes, the longer it's going to take to load.
So what can you do about that?
Well, one thing you can do is combine your CSS and JavaScript files.
Okay.
That reduces the number of requests that your site has to make, and it just streamlines the whole process.
Okay.
And then there's something called a content delivery network.
What is that?
It's also known as a CDN.
CDN?
It's basically a network of servers all over the world. And when someone visits your website, the CDN will serve the content from the server that is closest to them.
Oh.
So imagine someone is trying to access your website from across the world.
Yeah,
It's going to take a lot longer for the information to travel.
that makes sense.
But with the CDN, the content is already stored closer to them, so it loads much faster.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Cloudflare is a really popular example of a CDN.
Okay, I've heard of Cloudflare.
Yeah.
So CDNs speed things up.
Yeah.
Are there any other benefits?
Yeah, they can also help reduce server load, which can make your website even faster.
Wow.
And they can also help improve security.
Awesome.
So there are a lot of benefits to using a CDN.
Okay, that's great.
And then finally, we have old browser caching.
Old browser caching.
Yeah.
What's that?
So this is when your website is basically forcing visitors to re-download the same files every time they visit.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like having to re-download the same song every time you want to listen to it.
That would be so annoying.
Yeah, it's not very efficient.
So how do you fix that?
Well, you can enable browser caching,
Okay.
and that basically lets returning visitors load your site faster by storing files locally on their computer.
Oh, cool. So they don't have to download everything again.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a very informative deep dive.
I'm glad you think so.
Hopefully people will be able to use these tips to speed up their websites.
I hope so.
So much good information here.
Yeah.
And for more great information on digital marketing, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel,
Oh, awesome.
Digital Hustle Studio.
I'll check it out.
Thanks.